Before we get started on today's episode, we just wanted to let you guys know that it contains themes of suicide, sexual abuse,
substance abuse, and self-harm.
So if this is triggering to you,
please take care of yourself.
And we'll see you in next week's episode. This is my friend Iyla.
And this is my friend Hayden.
And this is What's the Talk About? A podcast about, well, everything.
And anything. We're going to start with our rose and thorn. So I can go first. My rose is that we're doing our second episode, and our first one.
Okay.
And so to do the second one, and I know this one is a little deeper and a little darker than our first one, but we're excited to do it. We've done a lot of research. And my thorn is that I am getting really stressed about school beginning. And so I'm like having to study for SATs already and like stressing about seeing school friends, everyone else, and like what I'm going to wear the first day even. But yeah, that's it.
My rose of the day is that I went to go get coffee and it was actually 50% off. And Lord knows how much I've spent on coffee this summer. And so having a $3 coffee was a really nice break for my bank account.
I know.
For sure. And my thorn of the day is that there is still so many months until I get to see my favorite artist in concert. I literally just want to go right now. I'm so sad that I have to wait. But today's episode, we're going to be talking all about mental health. And it doesn't really have any specific structure to it. It's just a bunch of stuff about mental health because we had something in our life happen recently that made us really think about mental health and how we're all dealing with it, specifically as teenagers.
And how it's connected to iPhones or any phones and social media.
Yeah, so we really wanted to just get on here and talk about it and even educate ourselves a little bit more about like what so many teens are going through.
Right. But we can start with some statistics about mental health.
Statistics. Timothy Chalamet made a really good song about statistics. You should definitely. And we're done with this episode. You guys should all go listen to it. Especially after talking about such a heavy topic, I think it will really heal the soul.
If you listen to
Timmy T?
Yeah, Timmy T. Okay, guys. Get to more serious topics. Well, why don't you start with some of yours?
Okay, so unfortunately, 1 in 6 youths under the age of 17 will experience a mental health disorder, and 70% of all lifetime mental health conditions preset before the age of 24. Adolescents with mental health conditions are particularly vulnerable to social exclusion, discrimination, stigma affecting readiness to seek help, educational difficulties, risk-taking behaviors, physical ill health, and human rights violations.
Okay. Well, I think the statistics above, when you talked about 1 in 6 youths under the age of 17, is an interesting one because we tend to not talk about mental health in America, especially as teenagers, and it's kind of seen as something that we should hide about ourselves. And so doing all this research and hearing all this stuff from actual sources, I think helps.
Yeah, and definitely when you're struggling with something like anxiety or depression, it kind of makes you feel like you're the only person in the world who's experiencing that. And to realize that there's so many other people around you that are experiencing the same thing. And the fact that no one talks about it.
It tends to be isolating, for sure.
Yeah.
My turn, I guess. In 2023, 80% of people in the U.S. had a severe mental health condition. And as we know, in COVID, it definitely affected schools, and more importantly, us as teenagers, since everyone was scared, locked in their houses, and the increase of loneliness actually made our mental health worse. So anxiety increased to 50% during COVID, and has decreased a little bit since then, but it's definitely higher since before COVID, which is 2020. Your statistics, huh?
And some adolescents are at a greater risk of mental health conditions due to their living conditions, stigma, discrimination, or exclusion, or lack of access to quality support and services. These include adolescents living in humanitarian and fragile settings, adolescents with chronic illness, autism spectrum disorder, an intellectual disability, or other neurological conditions, pregnant adolescents, adolescent parents, or those in early or forced marriages, orphans, and adolescents from minority ethnic or sexual backgrounds or other discriminated groups. And because of all of these people who are discriminated against and are suffering from these different disorders, is causing suicide to be the fourth leading cause of death among 15 through 29-year-olds.
Which is a very scary statistic because we're obviously around that age.
Yeah.
In our teenage.
And I mean, at this point in our lives, we've known people who have committed suicide at our school.
Right.
And just around us.
So it's becoming more realistic.
Yeah.
As we get older.
Mm-hmm.
And to be the fourth leading cause is definitely scary. Scary point. 58% of mental health problems are caused by body image. So we can all relate to that. And then 49% of mental health problems is caused by relationship. 47% of mental health problems are caused by school or work.
And the consequences of failing to address adolescent mental health conditions extend to adulthood, impairing both physical and mental health and limiting opportunities to lead fulfilling lives as adults. And the fact that it's 2024 and we're still failing to address like the mental health problems and providing helpful care to everybody who needs it is just so stupid to me. Like, everyone's saying that like these suicide rates are like huge and it's a big deal, yet no one's doing anything to really solve it.
Well, that's what my above point was, because we don't talk about it enough. Even in our school system, we have,
and therapists are expensive.
Right, we have resources in school, like counselors. But who knows if we can trust them? I have counselors that I've talked to that aren't necessarily top class, right?
Yeah.
Especially in public schools. You know, there's never as much as a support system. The Child Mind Institute says that people on social media have a higher rate of depression than those who spend less time on it. And I know you don't have social media, but I do. I have Instagram. And I know a lot of people have more apps. Like you can have Instagram and Snapchat, or Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok. And you could just be cycling around all those three platforms. And some are obviously a little more harmful than others. And it's been proven that social media does have an impact on it. It may not be the prime cause of our declining mental health, but it definitely affects us. And for us as teenagers to realize that is important. And definitely important to spend less time on that and more time on the real world. It's just how to get there is the problem.
Yeah.
And it's also a problem with social connection, like face to face. And for kids who are secluded from school, and like I was obviously secluded from school for some time, especially during COVID, since we were all online. I feel like that affected our mental health incredibly because we couldn't see each other, and therefore it made us reliant on our phones and social media. And I think that hasn't gone away. And the fact that COVID happened, 2 years now? Like it's been here since 2 years?
More than that, like 4 years.
Which is crazy because like everyone knows, feel like we're in a time vortex, right?
Yeah.
Since then. And for it to be that long and us pretending like COVID didn't affect us, like we don't talk about it that much, even in school. And when it is mentioned, people kind of try to steer away from it because it was scary and fearful, right? So I think that was a big cause of our mental health. And for our parents to say that people back then weren't as depressed as we are now, it's probably true. Or maybe we just don't have enough research to prove that. But we also went through a pandemic that our parents at our age didn't have to go through. So I think that's important as well. According to USC, most people who live with mental illness, and some of them who do ignore it and don't find help, tend to actually lead productive lives despite their challenges. So I think it's important to have faith in yourself and faith in time, because as time passes, things change naturally. And I think that's important to thinking about mental health. Some effects of mental health include productivity, education, economy, quality of life, lifespan, and family and personal life. And we obviously know as teenagers that school can affect our mental health, which then affects our grades, which then affects school. So it's really just a cycle of school messing with our mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the stressors in Iyla and I's like everyday life.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, I feel like Gen Z, there's so much pressure on us because we've had talks at school before where people come in and they're like, you're the only people who can save the climate. It's up to
Right.
you. You need to learn young so you can fix it, and you're just going to be the saviors of the world. And I feel like that can be so stressful, especially because there's still people who are in Generation Z who are still so much younger than us, and to be told that like their life they have to do something to solve a problem that we weren't even born. That
Right.
was
But we
created
didn't
when we
cause.
were, yeah.
Yeah.
And now we're left here to pick up the pieces. And, younger generations are told, oh, you have to fix what the older people in the government have done. You have to fix what they've done, what they've taken away from us.
And a lot of us aren't even old enough to get a driver's license, like to fix the world and fix the climate that we have now. And the news is stressing everyone out. So to think about that and the statistics of that is incredibly stressful as a generation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so stressed about like when I get older, like how much work am I gonna have to put in to like
Right.
fix issues that I didn't create,
And
that
the
I wasn't.
economy is
Yeah.
awful right now.
That's so stressful too because I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to buy a house.
Not gonna be
That's
able
what
to get a
people are
job.
saying. I'm not gonna be able to buy a house. I mean, this summer I applied to so many jobs and I haven't heard back from any of them. And it's just like, is that the same thing gonna happen when I really need a job? When I
Right.
need to support myself?
Right. And even if you have a family, that adds more pressure to you. And a lot of us at our age don't even want kids because of that reason. We don't want to put the same stressors that we have on ourselves on our kids.
And the world just sucks right now. And like we don't want to bring more life into it.
Right.
And have them suffer even more.
Yeah. Like past our generations, right? Yeah. I agree.
Do you have any other specific stressors for you?
I do think that finding a job and being in this economy is really difficult. And we're not even old enough to like get official jobs, right? And at this point, there's also the stressors of am I going to be in college and have 2 jobs just so I can afford a housing? Like how am I going to live? I don't want to live in a crappy apartment, right? And I can't afford anything, any luxuries. And I think that's the stress of today.
Yeah.
And I also think school is not helping whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And we don't have the kind of support system. I don't think any school does, whether it's private or public, to show us how to deal with this economy now. And I don't think anyone actually does know how to deal with it, even the adults.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're at school learning, like, different values of pie, but we aren't learning how to pay our bills.
Right.
And how much you should tip people, and how to
Just
pay your taxes. How not to go into bankruptcy.
Guys, I'm going to go into bankruptcy. Like, I'm not going to do my taxes or tax fraud. But, like, it's a running joke that I should have been saving for housing when I was, like, in kindergarten. Because that's the kind of system we have now. And how much money is needed to even buy a house or an apartment. Especially in the cities with more inflation. Do you have anything else that's stressing you out specifically?
I don't think so. Should we get into our poll?
Okay.
Iyla and I decided that for this episode, we wanted to talk to other teenagers around our age about what they specifically were stressed about.
Right.
So on Isla's Instagram and on our podcast Instagram, we were asking people to tell us what other things they were stressing about, and we also gave them a few options they could select from,
right.
Which included like parents, jobs,
school, social media,
news, the upcoming election,
friends. Yeah. We had around 30 people, which I know isn't a lot for like a huge outreach, but most of them are our classmates and our just fellow students who we can relate to, who can relate to us. So I think that's an important bit. Well, let's get ready to share some statistics.
So 50% of the people we polled were really stressed about upcoming school, which I can relate to because we're going into our junior year of high school.
Which is,
and
I've heard, the most stressful one.
Literally every older person I know is like, junior year is the worst. And I'm so scared to take the ACT and the SAT. And it's like I have to plan my whole life in this one school year. And I'm like I'm worried about my GPA and dropping it. And it's like this year makes or breaks if I get into college, which I know is not true, but I feel like that.
Yeah, let's be honest. I don't even know what I'm going to eat tomorrow. Are you asking me to plan my whole life out? I don't know what I'm going to do, even from a week from now. So to be taking all these tests that decide where we're actually going to go in life, it's very stressful. And I know we can change our trajectory at any point, but it's just the pressure of it, we have 20% saying that social media was stressing them. And that's actually one of our lower statistics. So that's interesting to say.
And that was pretty surprising to me because I feel like adults who are say that social media is affecting teenagers, which I definitely think it is, but that if we ask 30 people and only 20% of those people are saying that social media is affecting their mental health, is saying something.
But does that mean that we're hiding that part? Are we trying to say that social media isn't hurting us? It could just be that we don't realize it. And I feel like a lot of teenagers just get on the phone as soon as they get on, they go on Instagram or Snapchat, TikTok. And so it could be a skewed statistic, but I do know that it's 20%, and that is a lot. Next is parents, which was 30%. So it's interesting to look at between social media and parents, that parents are stressing them out.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely agree to that. And I just feel like we go to a really rigorous school compared to other people. And I feel like that stress, the stress of parents increases more with that because our parents just see us as our grades. And we don't amount to much if we don't get good grades, or if we fail a test. I just feel like it's never ending.
And we also go to a school that's very you either get good grades or you do good at sports. So to have that separation between the two is your parents are also stressing you out about sports, and if you aren't doing well in either one, and they also depend on each other. If you're not getting good grades, and you can't do well in your sport. If you're not doing well in your sport, then you have to get better grades. So I think having our parents putting that much pressure on either parts of our life, it's really stressful. Next is work. We have that at 29%. And I know at our age, not a lot of people have work, but we're starting to get into it. And it's kind of that's a stress too, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of this idea that, do we want to spend one more summer being actual kids? Because we're at the point of our life where it's we're either adulting or we're being childish, Mm-hmm. And to hear that from our parents, you should be more responsible, right? When you're just 16.
Yeah. It's get a job.
Yeah.
You're lazy if you don't have a job this time.
When we're not, in our 20s even.
I'm so burnt out from school.
Mm-hmm.
I work so hard at the end of the school year.
It's a 3-month break. I say we petition to make summer longer because I am dying here.
And then finally, 71% of people said that news was stressing them out.
Which is crazy. That's the majority.
No, but it's I feel like adults are always teens don't care about the world.
Right, the younger
generation. They don't care about anything. And then 71% of the people we polled are saying that the news is stressing them out. Well, because you have news of wars, mm-hmm. Russia,
this decade Ukraine has been trying for all of us.
And Palestine, and Israel. And you also have the upcoming election, mm-hmm. which
could decide our whole fate, honestly, of America.
Which is on my mind all the time.
Yeah.
I just, it's just so exhausting.
And to hear our parents talk about it in such a way that it's they're scared themselves is dramatic, right? For us to hear.
And people are even considering moving out of the country because of the election.
Hey, do you want to move together?
I really do.
Say we go. Yeah, I think that's a huge stressor.
I think it's important for people to know because, like, our generation cares.
Yeah.
We care a lot.
And even if we don't show it as much, it's always in the back of it. After the debate we had last week, that was a bit of a time to think about our future and the stress that we face, just as a country.
Yeah.
We also did a written survey because we wanted to know personally a little closer and specific what was stressing people out. So we asked the same question, but we had around 10 people answer, which is actually a good turnout. So we did a written survey, and the majority of people, 10 people, and 4 people, the majority answered that the political situation in the future of America was stressful. And as I just said, obviously the debates, the war is happening, the support that the wars are getting in America, obviously the support that Israel and Palestine.
And especially since, like, more than half of Americans disagree with the support that Biden is giving.
Right.
Israel.
Which is a whole nother podcast topic.
Coming soon.
Yes, episode. As we get closer to the election. And then we had other answers that were school related. And that's obviously, I expected to be second in majority, which was like things like the SATs, ACTs, just schools,
Mm-hmm.
And having to face that, which we already talked about, that being our future just based on a few numbers is crazy. And then the rest were, some of them were about stress about being in a lonely environment or a testing environment, especially in summer. We always know that it's either going to be, it's always a little.
Yeah.
And so I feel like having to face summer alone is a little testing. We also had, the rest were from friends and partners that were stressing. So those are more personal matters, but all of these are good examples of stressors.
And now that we have the answers from the survey, we're going to go talk more about how healthcare professionals are talking about these specific categories.
Right.
So first off, we're talking about COVID. And the mental health of America's youth has been declining for over a decade. Between 2018 and 2019, over 13% of children between 2 and 17-year-old had a diagnosed mental illness, though only about half of these children received treatment from a mental health professional. And then, according to data from the Health Resources and Services Administration, things have been getting progressively worse for a good 10 to 15 years. But COVID-19 accelerated that. By Benjamin Shane, an MD and PhD head of child and adolescent psychiatry at North Shore University Healthcare System in Chicago. And then, obviously, social media is a big topic that's thrown around about teenage mental health.
Right.
And according to December 2023 survey from the Pew Research Center, 93% of teens reported using YouTube, while 63% used TikTok, 60% used Snapchat, and 59% used Instagram. About 70% of teens visit YouTube daily, compared with nearly 60% for TikTok. But nearly 1 in 6 teens report using either YouTube or TikTok almost constantly. And evidence shows that all this usage can take a toll on mental health. And a 2021 study found that gadget addiction can contribute to mental health issues among Gen Z. Another study found that those who use social media regularly are more likely to experience cyberbullying. And according to the Social Media Victims Law Center, cyberbullying is linked to depression, anxiety, self-harm, and suicidal thoughts, as Iyla was talking about earlier. And research is showing that highly visual social media sites that are mostly based upon images, such as Instagram, can affect anxiety about appearance, body dissatisfaction, self-esteem, and depression.
Right.
And the use of selfies and filters may create the perception that people look more attractive than they are in reality, which will likely become an even bigger issue with AI. And I think we definitely know this because I've seen on YouTube and stuff that, like, people are like, oh, this is not what I actually look like. And I'm also happy though, because people are growing up and they're seeing these influencers are showing you that plus size bodies are beautiful and that everyone has acne, and they're trying to make a more realistic feed for people to see.
I think it's become a little more transparent as time goes on, and I'm really proud of our generation for starting that. Because I know the older generations were used to seeing these skinny bodies and these perfect skin and just like perfect lives going to traveling everywhere, you know? Just having to see that on social media does affect our mental health.
And like it wasn't like older generations weren't experiencing the same thing because you had magazines.
Right. And we had celebrities. If you look at celebrity interviews and the questions that especially targeted female audience is crazy.
Like even on late night talk shows, hosts
Right.
would be asking women, are your boobs real?
Yeah, or have you gained weight? How much weight have you gained? Oh, you just had a baby? And then they're asking these questions that don't pertain to real life scenarios, you know?
And no one like thought to talk back because it's just not what you did back then.
And we obviously
and like you'd get canceled
right.
for being rude, even though you totally deserved it. And nowadays I feel like celebrities are they advocate more for it.
Yeah.
Like I saw this one woman and she was at some place and like this interviewer kept following her around and she was just like, leave me alone.
Right. And people that's seen a little less as rude and more protective.
Yeah. And I think we still need to notice that like celebrities are real people too, and like
right.
they're allowed to have personal space.
And we all know that like if we're talking about body image, bodies fluctuate. And for women and men, right, we can't just focus on the female audience, but also the male audience who face scrutiny about being too skinny or, you know, too buff, right? So I think also the fact that we're seeing models today, like in campaigns like Aerie, and they're larger models, right? Or models that have imperfect skin. Just seeing these things that actually show real life and there isn't filters on anything is really nice. And even the celebrities or the social media people on social media that are actually transparent like that, even if they got, you know, boob job or something like that, or Botox, they're being transparent about it, and that's important.
But this talk also makes me think of Bridgerton because this season we saw someone who wasn't super skinny as a main character,
right?
Which was super great. But I was reading this article and it was like plus size model stars in Bridgerton or whatever. But that was such a toxic headline because for years there's been larger men who are portrayed with like these really skinny wives and known as like plus size man with skinny wife. You just see it as like normal.
Right.
And like no articles like headlining fat man with skinny woman, but then they're doing this they're doing that for women.
Right.
Who aren't the skinny little stick bodies.
And also Nicola handled this incredibly well. And all her Instagram, I follow her on Instagram, but all of her Instagram comments and everything, she's been getting a lot of positivity. Like people aren't mad that there's a plus size person in Bridgerton. And she's gorgeous. And they had full nude, right, in Bridgerton. And I think it was important for everyone to see that she wasn't scared to show her body.
I know she asked to be more nude in the scene.
Right.
So that she could empower other women.
Right. And we've seen in an interview, she said she's happy to be part of Perfect Rescue Baby, which I love. And she's a great actor. And I think to recognize that people are just people and we can't characterize them as larger, skinnier, you know, good skin, bad skin, you know? We're just people.
Yeah. So the next topic is school and sports. And for example, when superstar American gymnast Simone Biles withdrew from the team final at the Tokyo Olympics in 2021, citing mental health struggles, the entire world was taking notice of this. But unfortunately, the negative mental health impact that is increasing performance pressure can have on young athletes isn't contained to the highest levels of sports. Although there's not much research into how increasing pressures and expectations impact athlete mental health, there are several examples of tragic headlines about young athletes that suggest the effects of those pressures and expectations are there. In March 2022, Stanford University soccer goalie Katie Mayer, 22, died by suicide, and today reported that the combined pressure of school and sports may have been a contributing factor. In April of the same year, Jane Madison University star softball player Lauren Bennett died by suicide, according to NBC News, days before she had been named Colonial Athletic Association Player of the Week, and which is according to JAMIA. Young people are also subject to incredibly high expectations when it comes to academics and admissions to colleges and professional schools. In an older study that followed 121 gifted children for 11 years, researchers found that these high achieving students were successful at school, but also that they were overextended and overwhelmed by the amount of schoolwork they had, combined with the amount of time spent on extracurriculars. The study is from 2009, when less was expected of students, particularly advanced ones, than it is now. And like we were talking about before, many kids in our grade were agreeing the same things that this gifted student study.
Right. And we did talk about being
sports too.
Right. You're either good in sports. There's this thing that you're either good at sports or you're good at grades, right? Especially in high school. But I think you can be good at both, and we know that they correlate. You're not good at grades, playing sport, right?
And I know for sure that like if you're captain of a team,
right,
people are gonna blame you if you don't win.
Right.
And like
and practice every day, having
so much
put that on your
pressure to put on
body
yourself.
is crazy. And then I also think that having to be put in sports at a young age shows how much we grow up with that sport, and having our parents stick with it. You know, I have my parents who did sports when they were young, but they haven't stuck with it. And some people at our school are actually going to follow sports into college, and we know this. That's how they're going to get a scholarship, right?
Like there's one guy in our grade who has already committed to a college as long as he promised to keep playing football.
Right.
Which is crazy because now he's committed to that college, and even if in a year he decides that that's not what he wants to do anymore and that's not where he wants to go, he already got the money from there.
He's also committed. He's already committed to the sport. You know, once you've played 4 or 5 years, you're in.
And imagine getting an injury that would ruin it all.
Which happens, actually.
That'd be awful.
Yeah, frequently.
Another issue that causes mental health issues is gender and identities. And although there is an increased awareness and expanded understanding of gender and sexuality, it hasn't actually made things easier for the LGBTQ plus community. And the Trevor Project's 2023 report shows that more than 4 in 10 LGBTQ youth reported seriously considering suicide in the past year, while nearly 7 in 10 reported symptoms of anxiety and over half reported symptoms of depression. Only about 56% of those who wanted mental health care were able to get it. It's important to note that LGBTQ youth aren't inherently prone to suicide because of their sexuality or gender identity, per the Trevor Project. Rather, it's due to continued mistreatment and discrimination against LGBTQ people in society.
Right.
And that can include lack of support or acceptance from their families, as well as anti-LGBTQ legislation in the United States, which we all know is there's less and less rights that are
especially with our government now, in our future election.
And there's also like lack of education about them, especially in Florida.
Yeah.
LGBTQ youth are coming out at younger ages can put LGBTQ youth at an increased risk of victimization at a time where they may be less equipped to cope with that.
Right. Like, they're not fully developed.
I know, if they're super young and they're coming out.
And they're getting all this backlash because of it.
Like, that just shows you don't deserve to live, and they're being called slurs at such a young age. Queer youth finds themselves under attack at a time in their lives when fitting in is vital. Teens want to be accepted and understood. Witnessing online hate and conspiracy theories about other LGBTQ plus people makes teens feel panicked, isolated, and fearful. In terms of acceptance, we still have a long, long way to go. Nearly 1/3 of the youth surveyed by the Trevor Project said that their mental health was poor. Most of the time are always due to anti-LGBTQ policies and legislation. And then the last thing that is leading mental health issues is substances.
Right.
And the good news is that substances and their use among teenagers have actually declined in recent years. So when we're talking about substances, we're talking about like hard drugs and also alcohol. And I know alcohol is like mostly associated with like teens doing drugs because like, you know, teens go to parties and there's usually access to alcohol, and like, you know, I feel like teens are drinking from a really young age.
Yeah.
But we've also seen obviously that like that alcohol abuse is going down for sure,
which is a great
yeah. But as substance abuse is going down in recent years, unintentional drug overdose deaths are actually on the rise among young people, despite the decreasing levels of drug use. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, the number more than doubled at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, from 0.89 deaths per 100,000 teens aged 15 to 19 in the final quarter of 2019 to 1.85 deaths per 100,000 teens in the second quarter of 2020. The number remains nearly double what it was pre-pandemic. The most recent data from the third quarter of 2022 shows that 1.63 overdose deaths per 100,000 teens. And this is scary because I think that teens are going to drugs to like get rid of this pain that they're experiencing from their depression and their anxiety and being outcasted from society.
It's a way to deal with it.
Yeah. But also teens are not getting, like, teens are shamed for doing drugs, but they're not taught how to use them safely.
It's also interesting to say that your problem is alcoholism or drug abuse when that's how you're treating your actual problem. Like, that is just a way to treat it. And I think we should actually focus on the root of it.
And even though it's just like 1 in 100,000 teens are dying from an accidental overdose, there's so many teens in the world.
Right.
That's such a large number.
Right.
Which can be prevented if teens can get the right resources.
If we had a better system. Right.
That they don't have to turn to drugs to solve these issues.
Right.
And also, there needs to be better education about how to use these drugs safely, and if you are going to use them. I mean, we were lucky enough that in our health class, we were taught how to use drugs safely. And I know that our school counselors are advocating to try and get different medicines that can undo an overdose, which I think is really important.
Right, medical support. You need it, right?
Yeah.
And also, it's important to realize when you need it. So I think we should be taught that as well.
I think when we are getting taught CPR and lifeguarding and all that, we should also be learning how to undo an overdose.
Right. They should add that to the list.
Okay, so now that we've been talking about a really dark topic, let's play a game.
Okay. So this game is going to be about social media versus real life. Or, online versus real life. I'm going to give an example of something that can happen online and in real life, and you're going to differentiate. So let's say body shaming. What do you think online versus real life?
I think it's worse online because people can hide behind that screen.
Right.
And
the filters put on top of it as well.
Yeah, so I feel like it's less likely to happen in real life. Like, people will still call you fat. Like, they can go up to you and be like, you're so fat. But, like, there's obviously going to be some guilt behind that person.
Right.
But when you're doing it online, the person basically doesn't exist to you.
You're also more disconnected from that person. To not know them personally makes it easier to say something.
Yeah. But I think it's still this, like, online versus offline. It's just more likely to happen on social media.
I agree. Plus, with filters and everything, and the person that could be body shaming you could not look like how they look in the book, right?
Yeah. Okay, Iyla, what do you think about bullying online versus offline?
I think it's the same thing as body shaming. I mean, bullying is like the example you used of just calling people fat. That isn't. But online it is easier because you don't know who you're exactly talking to. You don't know their life story. You don't know what they specifically look like, because it is easier to create deception in an online world, especially when you're talking about, like, I know bullying happens between different economic districts. So calling someone poor, calling someone fat, it's not as easy.
I kind of agree and disagree with you, actually.
Tell me what.
I feel like bullying is a really big issue. Like, even when I was, like, in kindergarten, I mean, I used to get bullied all the time.
Right, and I don't have the same experiences as you because I was homeschooled. So that is different.
But, like, before I was even on, like, any social media, like YouTube and stuff like that, or, like, I've gotten texts from people before, like, from anonymous numbers that, like, telling me mean things, but I feel like both are just as bad as each other, and I feel like on social media it's a little bit different because you have less to go off of. But in person, like if you know someone more specifically, you can like get these different things to like attack them on.
Right.
Like on social media, you're seeing what that person wants you to see. So you can like call them whatever you see visually to you, you can call them out on whatever.
And the fact that it is reliant on a visual representation is kind of skewed because we don't know what they sound like or what they're actually feeling right now in the emotional capability. So I think it's definitely different.
But like if you go to school with somebody, I feel
Right.
like you know more about them and you can hurt them
But
in more ways.
the fast amount that like information travels. Like if you're being mean to someone and you put it on your story because it's on Instagram, and then even if it's close friends, information spreads a lot. And if you're spreading rumors like that, that's super dangerous because it's more widespread, don't you think, than school? But also information does spread around school.
Yeah.
So, having to compare those two skills. What do you think about being disconnected online versus offline? So like social anxiety.
I mean, there's definitely FOMO in either one, but on social media, I know that if you see that like your friends had a party without you, like that's gonna hurt more because you're like you probably are gonna figure it out sooner, or even you'd see it if you wouldn't like you saw it online versus if maybe you would never see it at all if you were offline. But
and also having to see posts with other, and I know like we can't be so closed off that we can't allow our other friends to have other friends, but seeing them hang out with people that aren't us
and maybe looking happier in the picture
hits a sore spot, right? Especially for certain people who have challenges in that. I also think, do you think it's easier to meet people on social media, or do you think it's easier to meet them just?
I feel like it depends on your personality.
Right.
Like maybe if you like are introverted like I am, and then you're like on social media. I mean, I can't really relate because I don't have social media like you have it. I can't meet people from other places, but like I feel like again, going online gives you a screen and you can be whoever you want to be. Like you can create this perception of yourself. Like you can be more outgoing online versus like offline. And I think you can definitely meet more people online. But maybe if you're more extroverted, you might meet more people offline.
Real life, right?
Yeah, because you're just so much more open to like talking to people.
And that's what I'm talking about. You know, like seeing people. Everyone has a different personality. Obviously, everyone's unique. So to have all this data, it really just depends on what kind of person you are. Whether you're ambivert, extrovert, or introvert, right? Or anywhere in between. Well, I think that's it for a little game. We can get into parents now. Our favorite topic.
We wanted to talk about how parents are always blaming the phone.
Yes.
For any feelings we may have.
And we're not necessarily targeting parents if they are listening right now, but we do have our own conversation. Like, I kind of believe that they're brainwashed into thinking that devices, even though they have them themselves, and my dad has social media.
Same with mine.
Dad has social media, and a lot of the older people do, and they might not be using it the same way we do, posting as often, or to like try to look cool in school, right? Because they don't leave the same place as we do. But it's kind of ironic to see them using social media almost in the same way we are, and to say like that's what's wrong with your life. That's what's causing this depression. It's your phone, right? Like that's a large.
Oh, you're sad. It's your phone. You're sick. It's your phone.
Yeah, you didn't put the milk away. It's your phone. Like we're talking about these stupid examples, right?
Or you go and use the internet to relax after a long day. You sit down for 2 seconds and your parents are like, "You're so lazy."
Or you've been on.
I've been working all day.
Right. And to not. And I get that at our age we don't necessarily have our brains developed to regulate social media. Like we can't necessarily get off social media as they can.
Social media's also hasn't been around long enough to get enough research in. Like, no one will know if it will have any bad effects on.
And it's been rising
when you're older.
in only basically the last decade, right?
Yeah, and I think there's also more regulations going towards it too, which is good and bad in its own little category. But like, I know that they're trying to ban TikTok because it's bad for kids, and I feel like there's regulations going on them, and it might take a little bit, but they also need to figure out how to regulate it without taking away like freedom of speech.
I also think that once you take away TikTok, right? Once you take away Instagram or any of the other Snapchat, Snapchat. I think if you take away these, we're just going to create new ones. Like, let's be honest. Our generation is used to social media by now. And so for us to just completely be banned from it is a little crazy. But to do it in small doses, I think it's okay, in my personal opinion. Yeah. But like, we have these like phrases like everyone used to have, or everyone has anxiety, or everyone has depression, or you're not alone, like hearing that from your parents. Like, I don't hear that from my parents a lot. You're not alone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I hear more from like parents and stuff that like, oh, everybody has anxiety. Like, move on.
You're not special.
Yeah.
And
like,
hearing
big
that,
deal.
You're not getting the support you need if you are here. And like other phrases, like everyone used to be so much happier when I was a teenager. Like, give me a break. We're not living in the 80s and 90s anymore. We have phones now. And you guys used to have flip phones. Like, it's just not the same world we're living in. And you messed up the world and the climate and the news that we're dealing with now. So how are we supposed to deal with it other than regulating our emotions on screens, which is what they put us on. I also think that parents think they can fix all of our problems. And in reality, that's not what we're asking them to do. I think we're asking them for support and to tell us that we can get help when we need, and they'll give us the resources to get help, especially at our age.
Your parents just to listen and to support you.
Right.
Like,
we don't need them to just jump into action unless we really want them to and tell them that directly.
Yeah, but we need to also learn how to solve our own problems because our parents are not always going to be there for us. And like, when my family's like, oh, like, fix this, just apologize, or just like,
sometimes it's not always what we want to hear, and we just want to hear that
I'm there for you.
Yeah,
like, I'm on your team.
Yeah, I'm on your side. I don't think they get that a lot of times. And I also think when they say that everyone used to be happier, I don't think they realize how much more research is like in present 2024. How much research about mental health we have now that we didn't have in the 80s, 90s, before that.
Because like, even looking back to when women were struggling with postpartum depression, and doctors literally told them, oh, it's just because you don't have the motherly instinct.
Right.
Like, spend more time with your child and you'll be fixed.
Which is like, now ingrained in us as females.
I know, but also it's like showing how doctors used to dismiss any mental issues. And it's like, yeah, more people are depressed nowadays, but how much of that is just more advanced research? And like, now people are more focused on it.
And we obviously have a different climate now. Like, in our world, we're facing world wars, right? That we did face world wars, but it wasn't this broadcasted. I guess with social media now, we have a lot of propaganda, especially about the Palestine and Israel war and the Russia,
Ukraine war. Because like, you're also seeing these videos that you're not supposed to see, like things that are like mind altering, like piles of dead bodies, and like, that's scary to see.
Yeah, especially affecting us, as young.
And especially because like, me and Iyla are like, we really care about these issues, and to see protesters getting stepped on by police officers and old women who are protesting, and police officers are dragging them to the ground and treating them with disrespect
for us to care about this so much, and then for our parents to just dismiss us about our issues that we think is important, because we're going to live in that environment. We are living in that environment. And I don't think the government or anyone's actually hearing us out as our generation.
Yeah. And like, as we have two presidential candidates who are extremely old and don't represent any of the things I stand for.
Right.
It's hard because it's like, you guys are representing such a small group of people who, no offense, are not going to be here for that much longer.
Right.
Like, we need younger people to represent us. And I also hate when older generations are like, oh my god, Gen Z's entering the workforce now. Like, they're going into these big companies and they're like so scared of us. And we're like,
especially that there's this like preconceived notion that we're just not going to be good at working. Like, they've ruined the work environment for us. Don't put it on us that we're like we're bad workers when we don't even know if we're bad workers yet because we haven't even been in the workforce. And then also this idea that they constantly dismiss our emotions as parents, and I think that they think that's their job because they had suppressed emotions when they were young and their parents were telling them the same thing. So there's also this generational trauma that we have to face as a generation. And I think it's important to stop that now. We have to filter that out of our system.
Another thing where of the pressures of the world, that to break that cycle of not talking about our problems.
Right. Like
the stigma of mental health. Like, we need to talk about it.
Right.
We need to teach our children that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to feel things that aren't happy all the time. We
also need to teach our parents and then our grandparents and our great grandparents that it's okay to talk about it.
It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah. And I think that's important to address. Kind of the reason we got into this episode was because, as Hayden said, there was a kind of big life change in our school life recently.
So our school ended up banning cell phones, and they named mental health as the main reason, which is why we decided to even do this deep dive into mental health. Because, like, as someone who is in therapy, I know a little bit about mental health, but definitely going deeper and seeing the leading causes of mental health, and to find that social media isn't as big as the media makes it out to be, or our parents, even our school, is just like, it's important because, like, yeah, maybe taking away will help a little bit, but like, we're still going to go on it at home.
It's also important to trust our leaders in school, our principals and our teachers. And with this new rule, our cell phone ban, I don't think we're going to trust them as much. And as a school, we pride ourselves in individuality, community, expression, and freedom. And I think they're really setting us back instead of.
Yeah, and like, we can't take pictures, and we can't ask our friends where they are, or like stuff like that.
And we have some parents that are definitely for this ban, and I kind of understand where they're coming from. But at the same time, they like to say that, oh, when I was young, we weren't using cell phones in school. Like, you guys will be fine. First of all, my parents, I don't know about yours, but they went to a smaller school. Yeah, our school is pretty big. We have a big campus. We're not going to be running around looking for each other when you're halfway down campus and I'm all the way up. And I can't text you where I am. To me, that's ridiculous.
And I'm like scared that I'm going to be like eating lunch alone because I won't like be able to find my friends.
And at this point, we're talking about like emoji combos. Like, it's gotten that serious.
And I know it sounds a little silly that like we're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to survive without our phone?
It's not like that.
It's really not. It's just like, I want to document my last few years of high school.
Yeah, why couldn't they wait 2 more years, guys? We're almost out.
I know, and like, I can see a little band for like during class,
right?
But like during lunch and our free periods, it's just crazy. And like, I don't know. I mean, like we've been saying, mental health is not just caused by social media and cell phone use. Like, that's just such a small part of it.
Right. And the fact that we're not.
Yeah, it's another thing that the world is trying to like say, like, how do I phrase this?
Take it away.
It's another way for the world to like suppress feelings of mental health by signing it off on phones.
Yeah. And if our school's banning cell phones, what's going to follow, you know? Especially if we pride ourselves as one of the more freedom expressive schools.
And also, like, older generations had phones too to, like, call your friends and be like, where are you? Want to hang out?
Right.
Like, I do the same thing. Like,
we're not riding bikes to each other's houses anymore. We're an evolved generation. We're living in the 80s and 90s, like our parents. And I think it's important for them to realize that, and for the principals and teachers to realize that, because they're our parents, right? Mm-hmm. And then, also, as you said, we can't take pictures. And I pride myself as one that takes 1,000 pictures a day. Not because I'm like, oh, I'm going to post on Instagram. This is going to be like, I show everyone what I'm doing. It's more so I can look back at it and feel good that I've been doing this and that I can document it, that I have pictures of my friends that I can look at. And 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now, when I'm in college, I can think, this is what in the past. Pictures.
I don't want to look back on, like, my high school pictures and be like, I wish I had more pictures.
Right. That's one of the worst feelings, to not get a picture, of that special. And I can understand being that kind of person that's like, oh, I just want to enjoy the moment. But sometimes you want to enjoy the moment longer. And I think pictures do that. And let's get into music. We're not allowed to have music.
And I know for sure that music can help with your hormones. Like,
right.
If you're sad, you listen to sad music and it keeps you sad. But if you're sad and you listen to happy music, you feel better.
Right. Especially that one song that you feel connected to. It's one of the music to me is one of the most important things in my life. And to not have it in a place where I'm spending most of my time in school is absolutely absurd.
And even if you use the argument of cell phone addiction, it's like the same as an addict. If you take away their drugs, they're going to want it more.
Right.
So if you're taking away our supposed addiction for a day, but then we go home, we're going to use it more.
Right. School ends around, what, 3:30, 4? So that means that for the rest of the day, maybe I'll just get in my car and I'll go straight on my phone, right? Mm-hmm. And it may just increase my cell usage.
And even if you take it away, it's going to be worse for your mental health because you're going to be wanting that thing.
And even if you don't use it after school, or you just use it the same amount as you were, it's going to make us be hiding in bathrooms stalls instead, right? Mm-hmm. Which is crazy to think about, because why would we be hiding in the bathroom stall to express ourselves on our phones, or to listen to one song that we really like, or to call our friends? We're going to be hiding in bathrooms to call our friends. I think that's absolutely crazy, and I do not want to do that every time I need to text you. And I also think that a large part of this are taking away from the academic pressure that they're putting us on. And so I think I use my phone anyway at school to be like, oh, I just took that test. I need a break. So I'm going to look at social media, or I'm going to go on Pinterest and just look at pretty pictures, or listen to music that I can relate to.
Just take my mind off of something.
Right.
Just a minute. Or to text that friend who lives in a different state that you haven't seen in 2 years.
It's all about connection. And for us as a generation, I think that's what we use social media for. Mm-hmm. And I think that's okay, because that's what we're used to at this point. And if you take away our phones, we still have our computers. Like, let's be honest, what we have on our phone can translate to what we have on our computers. Like, I can access Instagram on my computer, Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's solving the problem.
So we just had a few helpful tips for whenever you're not feeling 100%, which is A-okay.
Yes.
So exercise, it helps create endorphins. So exercise can even just be taking a little walk.
Right. And even if you do sports, and I know we said that sports makes you stressed, but
it's something you love,
right,
and you enjoy. Make it fun. Mm-hmm. Play with friends. Play with your family.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be in a school environment.
Yeah.
So I think exercise helps. And then eating healthy and taking care of yourself. That just is like basic hygiene. If you take care of yourself, take a shower, it helps,
Everything showers. Those are so fun.
I love those.
Sleep. I feel like parents are very against you sleeping.
Yeah.
But it's good for you in like healthy amounts. And it's okay to sleep. It's a guilt-free zone.
Yes. Guys, take a nap, please. if you
dream about something.
I know.
I want to try lucid dreaming one day.
We should do it together. Anyway, also, I know this sounds like so hippie of us to say, but like meditation.
Yeah, like if you're ever feeling stressed about something, just like a few minutes to yourself.
I know. It doesn't have to be like, sitting there for an hour trying to like clear your mind of everything. Just take 5 minutes out of your day to breathe or stretch or feel good in your skin,
You want to try and stay positive, which is easier said than done. But you just want to look for the good in things because it helps life go by better.
Yeah, it does.
Like look for the light at the end of the tunnel. It may be bad now, but it'll be better.
It really will. Like, this isn't like fake advice. And everyone knows that things change. And they change pretty fast too.
Yeah.
So if you just take a breath, maybe try all the things that we said before: exercise, eating, sleeping, meditation, and then focus on the positive effects of those.
And you're always going to remember the bad things, right. But to also remember something positive that happened.
Maybe inside that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you need medical help, please get it. And it's okay. And even if you can't trust your parents, maybe try trusting your friends. If you can't afford a therapist, which is totally understandable because they're very overpriced, talk to a person you trust. But make sure you talk to a person you trust fully, because a lot of people these days spread your information really quickly. And if you don't want it spread, find that person that you can talk to. And if you are that other person that they're talking to, please practice empathy and be supportive. Be an active listener.
There's also a lot of online resources that you can text anonymously to.
Yeah.
You can call people to get help. Like, you're not alone for this.
Right.
And you totally matter. It's also important to stay connected to your friends and to those who matter to you. Because even though you might feel like you want to be alone at some times, there's people who care for you and will help you through the darkness.
Yeah. We're gonna give you some mental health resources
that you can either look to or donate to.
Yes.
And the first one is Mental Health America. And Mental Health America advances the mental health and well-being of all people living in the U.S. through public education, research advocacy, and public policy alongside direct service.
Our next resource is Active Minds, which empowers young adults to reduce the stigma surrounding mental health, create communities of support, and ultimately save lives.
The next one is The Home for Little Wanderers, which helps build stable lives and hopeful futures for children who are abused, neglected, or at risk.
And our final one is Girls Inc., which inspires all girls to be strong, smart, and bold.
And we'll also put the links to them in the description.
I just want to say thank you all for listening. It's been great to do this episode, and the research that we've been doing is really important.
And we want to give a big virtual hug to all of you.
Yeah, and please contact us if you have any questions or any comments.
And if you just want to talk to somebody,
yeah, we're here.
Email us.
Please.
Really old-fashioned, but I promise we'll answer.
And it'll be totally anonymous. We won't share your information.
Yeah.
We love you.
We love all of you. And thank you so much for listening.
Yes.
And I hope you have
a wonderful day.